Coming up on this edition of Southwest TV News. RCMP are warning the public to be aware of counterfeit drugs circulating in many communities across Canada. Now through the end of August is prime West Nile virus season. And according to provincial health officials, a number of Culex tarsalis mosquitoes, the breed carrying the West Nile virus, have already been detected across southern Saskatchewan.
So I'm a professor of theological studies at Concordia University, Montreal. And one of the things that I teach is pilgrimage studies. I want people to know it's actually possible to walk 350 clicks across the prairies and follow a trail, a recognized trail, and do it.
Thanks for joining us here today. Counterfeit drugs are on the rise, often ending on a fatal note for unsuspecting users. We have more in today's top story. RCMP are warning the public to be aware of counterfeit drugs circulating in many communities across Canada. The latest case reported in Kindersley, where over the past month, 3 individuals have taken fentanyl pills, counterfeit OxyContin. 2 of these young adults died, with the 3rd treated in hospital. RCMP state drug use is a serious issue at any time, and even more so when the drugs are counterfeit and comprised of a lethal combination of ingredients unknown to the user.
We wanted to advise everyone that there is a danger present, as there always is with illicit drug use. However, this time in a form of counterfeit OxyContins. This is a suspicion that we have. Again, there's no confirmation that this has been the cause of death until we receive further reports. But it's a scary thing taking place right now. You hear about it out in Western Canada and BC, and it's being seen now in Saskatchewan, and I'm sure it's widespread in other places. Perhaps we're just not hearing about all of it. So very concerning for everyone.
RCMP further stressed that any medication required for ailments or other medical conditions should always be prescribed by your physician or purchased from a pharmacy. Anyone having information on this latest case in Kindersley or other illegal drug trafficking should contact their local police service or Crime Stoppers. Imagine a destination where you can enjoy world-class dining and unique accommodations. Take a leisurely stroll through streets filled with rich history while browsing for that perfect gift. Buy fresh produce from the farmers market and enjoy a range of cultural events while stepping back in time to learn more about Canada's Old West. Your summer destination is awaiting you in Maple Creek. For event listings and all things Maple Creek, visit our website. Following ongoing hot temperatures and now recent rainfall, the mosquitoes carrying the West Nile virus are still flying around, and therefore caution is advised. Now through the end of August is prime West Nile virus season, and according to provincial health officials, a number of Culex tarsalis mosquitoes, the breed carrying the West Nile virus, have already been detected across southern Saskatchewan, and these numbers are expected to increase in the coming days. Therefore, caution is advised when spending any time outdoors between dusk and dawn.
Culex tarsalis, which carries the West Nile virus, prefers the heat, the drier heat. If there's a lot of rain in between, it doesn't do well because it breeds in very stable water, very still water, stagnant water. So if there's rain and things like that, that disrupts its cycle with the eggs and the growth of mosquitoes. But yeah, when it's really hot or really dry, they are multiplying at a much faster rate and will easily transmit virus.
And if you're heading outdoors, cover up with long sleeves and wear long pants. And wear a repellent containing DEET, although many natural products are also out on the market that repel mosquitoes. Symptoms of the West Nile virus include severe headaches, fever, chills, and body aches. Generally, 80% of the population shows no symptoms and are able to battle the virus internally. However, 20% of reported cases do develop severe symptoms, and in some instances can lead to hospitalization and even death. Provincial West Nile surveillance reports and maps are updated every week and available online.
You get in and start playing with nuclear power, you're going to get more radiation and more cancer and more everything else. And I think we don't need it.
Another exciting season of Market Square returns to downtown Swift Current, featuring live entertainment, fresh garden produce, crafts, and other unique vendors. Market Square, every Saturday at the corner of Central and Chaplin. Proudly presented by the City of Swift Current and Standard Motors, along with Innovation Credit Union and Southwest TV News. Southwest Saskatchewan is home to a number of unique stories, and a number of historians recently walked through the historic Northwest Mounted Police Trail.
I want people to know it's actually possible to walk 350 clicks across the prairies and follow a trail, a recognized trail, and do it. So I'm a professor of theological studies at Concordia University, Montreal, and also a professor of diversity and sustainability at Concordia. I also am an ordained Lutheran minister, and one of the things that I teach at Concordia is pilgrimage studies. And I give talks on pilgrimage, and I think I was in York in the UK, and giving a talk on pilgrimage. And all of us who are from North America or from Australia, we're talking about European routes. And at some point I sat back and I thought, well, why are none of us talking about where we come from? And for me, I had for many years thought about walking in southwest Saskatchewan, I think just as a way of getting in touch with my own roots. I grew up in Swift Current and left Swift Current when I was, I guess, 15. And so the land, is in you when you grow up in an environment. So after 30 years in Quebec, I was thinking about how do you get in touch with where you are. And I was teaching pilgrimage and realizing that none of us who were academics from North America were talking about indigenous pilgrimage, meaning local pilgrimage. And all of these things kind of came together. And I remembered the Northwest Mounted Police Trail. I remembered those signs. And I thought, there's a trail. And I got in touch with the Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society. And at first I got in touch with them because I thought I'd better check with them. They're the people, the local historians. And it didn't take long before I realized that not only should I get in touch with them, but I absolutely needed them.
Our information is that Everett Baker and his group of volunteers erected 260 markers. We've got about 120 on our database, so that's not even close. And I'm thinking that there may not be that many out there, or if there were indeed that many to start with, most of them have been lost.
Well, he's wrapped up in this trail because he was an amateur historian. He was a pool man, Saskatchewan wheat pool man, and he was well known in the communities from going around and showing movies. He was one of these tireless community workers who believed in community. And he was a documenter of life in these small communities, similar to in some ways he was similar to some of the artists now who are trying to document life in small town southwest Saskatchewan. But he went around and he took photos and he showed movies in the halls before there were ever movies that other people could go to. So a number of the people that we've spoken with said, oh, that was our first experience of a moving picture, was when Everett Baker came to town and set up. And he had a generator apparently in his car to run the movie projector, and he would show movies for the benefit of the community. And so in a couple of years after that, when he came around and he said, I'd like to set up this trail marking the Northwest Mounted Police Patrol Trail, people said yes. And he was able to raise, I think it was $10,000. I may be wrong about the amount. But in 1961, that would have been an incredible amount. And he was able to do it. He clearly had people who believed in his dream of marking this trail? Well, it's marked from Wood Mountain to Fort Walsh, because Northwest Mounted Police Trail, which is what Everett Baker put on the signs. It is that, of course, that's what he put on the signs, but that tends to confuse people, and it confused me for almost a year, thinking that this was then the trail that the Northwest Mounted Police marched out in the Great Trek West along. And in fact, that's not so. They marched further north, more along what is now number 1 highway. So what I started calling it is the Northwest Mounted Police Patrol Trail, because it's the patrol trail. It's what the Northwest Mounted Police patrolled back and forth. Now that's quite romantic and a lovely name. The only problem with that as a name is that it doesn't include the Métis, who were the Métis traders and bison hunters were perhaps the primary people who dug those tracks into the prairie, and before them, the First Nations, the Assiniboine and the Gros Ventre, and many First Nations were going back and forth across that trail too. So do you call it the First Nations Trail? No, probably not. Do you call it a Métis Trail? Maybe. Do you call it the Northwest Mounted Police Trail? Or do you call it the Northwest Mounted Police Patrol Trail? And then what about the Sitting Bull Trail? It could be that, because this was the trail that Sitting Bull and the Lakota went back and forth between Fort Walsh and Wood Mountain. And the negotiations, very sensitive political negotiations at a crucial time in Canadian history, were conducted with Sitting Bull and the Lakota warriors and James Morrow Walsh, the earth from his grave I brought with me from central Canada, and he is a crucial figure. So you could call it the James Morrow Walsh Trail. He probably rode that trail more than any other Euro-Canadian before or since. It's like anything where you have a task, all you're doing all day is walking. And there's a hardship to it, because walking 15 miles or so, sometimes across knee-high grasses or thigh-high grasses, through coulees and over hills, isn't easy. And it creates a kind of community of suffering, a little bit of mild suffering, and also just so much time. How often do we have that kind of time where you're walking with somebody companionably for mile after mile, and you ask them, how are things going? Or they ask you, and you get into topic, what are your interests, and so on. So there's a conviviality that comes out of that kind of experience. And it's been different every week, because Hugh and I have walked the whole thing so far, but our companions on what I call a pilgrimage have been different every week. But this week has been fun. We've had people from Val Marie who joined us, and Stu, Tash, and Cindy who joined us for the walk today. And you just learn more every time from the people that you're walking with.
Here we are, we hear of treks that people do in Spain and treks that they do and we have probably one of the most spectacular treks anywhere that you could find. So I guess I was envious when I found out that he was going to do it. Oh God, I just thought it was amazing that somebody was going to do that. This area is to me, is just, it's an amazing area, and when you think back in the history, and every time you put your foot in the ground, you're stepping maybe in the tracks of somebody who was here 170 years ago, and it just gives me goosebumps every time I come down here and get out in the hills again. As a kid, you take it for granted. We would take our ropes and go out and climb the cut banks, and we would play in the water, but we never understood the significance of it. It's only when you get older and start to think about things that you start to realize that this is a very special place.
It is one big conversation, I mean, your relationship with the land is a conversation. Your relationship with the stranger that's suddenly walking beside you all day long and sleeping beside you in a tent and sharing their food with you and helping you put up your tent is a conversation. It's all about relationships. So, and it's amazing how you cut to the deeper, darker stuff. I don't know if it's because of the stark landscape and the bareness of it, and it's not a superficial conversation that you get into. You really get down deep quickly. I just think that's an enormous metaphor too. I mean, when you cross a water, you leave something on the other bank. And we left a lot of sore feet, you know, our own personal struggles back there. But it was so refreshing. It's such a necessary part of a pilgrimage at some point to cross a river, to cross a water. And trusting your footsteps along the way. There's one thing to just plod along, you know, and one foot in front of the other. When you're on a tricky terrain that you can't see, then the metaphor gets bigger, and you trust yourself.
This trail really was crucial to the history of Canada. I'd like that profile to be better known. I believe that if we were Americans, this trail would be very well known, because it really was the closing of the frontier with the States. It was the site where our first political refugees, you can think of them that way, the Lakota, were taken in and harbored and sheltered for a while, and then they were actually pushed out. And so a typical Canadian, we sheltered for a while and then we did something else. This was the place of the last bison herds, really, on Canadian soil. And places like Wood Mountain and Fort Walsh were on the tongues of politicians in Washington, D.C., and in Ottawa and in London. And we don't realize that, how crucial this whole area was, and how crucial this time was for the development of Canada as a country.
This territory is just pulling people in who are starting to learn to respect the history of the territory. I mean, there's a lot of writing being done about the territory, you know, a lot about homesteading, a lot about clearing the plains, a lot about the Native and Métis history, and it just seems to be time.
I think as our generations move away from the land, our kids are going to want to know the history. And so I think it's important that we preserve it.
Well, meet me, please. I'm down on my knees. So damn far from what we believe. You're on one coast, I'm on the other. Let's get moving soon so we can be together. Oh, meet me on the prairie. Well, I picked a spot. It's a pretty little spot, north end of town. It could lot. You're on one coast, I'm on the other. Let's pack our bags, honey, and make a home together. Oh, meet me on the prairies. Wasn't quite right, wasn't quite wrong. All we needed was time to carry on. The roads are clear, my heart is open. You'll find me, baby, between the ocean. Between the
Well, this brings to a close another episode of Southwest TV News, reporting the stories that matter to you. We always welcome your news tips. You can always reach us here by phone at our studio or by email to contact us at southwesttvnews.com. Also, be sure to join us daily online for the latest news from across Southwest Saskatchewan and so much more at MyLocalTV.ca. And be sure to follow us on a range of social media. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Carol Andrews.